Living in a state of stress means that you're survival focused, which means that you're making decisions because you're afraid of what might happen. You're running away from fear instead of towards success.
Are you constantly feeling stressed out, tired, and anxious in the quest for more success and more abundance in your life or business? Well, there's certainly a lot of messaging that tells us that as business owners, we need to hustle and grind to make it big. And it's leading people to burnout and failure. And for many people, that's instead of the success that they truly deserve. Hello, I'm Natasha Mitchell. I'm going to be digging more into this topic today with my special guest, Dr. Chris Boman. He's the owner of Trailhead Family Chiropractic in Murrieta, California. Chris is a successful clinician, entrepreneur, and a regenerative farmer, and he's been a chiropractor for over 6 years. He specializes in helping people with special needs, pregnant women and children, to live in optimal health through neurologically based and root cause focused chiropractic care. He's also the author of a book called Perspective, Rewire Your Brain for Success and Abundance, which is coming out soon. So welcome to the show, Chris. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Natasha. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
And, Chris and I are in a high-level mastermind together. And I just want to remind people that the network that you can build in masterminding and expanding your horizons, which is all about your business without borders, is amazing. And Chris is just the perfect example of a guest through that network. So as I said, we're going to be exploring today a little bit more about how people can get out of their state of stress and into a state of ease so that they can live their life with vision and purpose and achieve those goals, which can ultimately lead them to more success and abundance. So Chris, let's get started. Why don't you tell people a little bit about how you got into this whole field of chiropractor and health and wellness, and what attracted you to this, and why is our health and wellness so important?
Yeah, well, I love talking about this story because I feel like I feel so blessed that I've known what I wanted to do for a long time. A lot of people kind of meander through life and finally find something that they like doing in their mid 30s or 40s. And I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor starting in high school. I figured it out after I didn't have the body style to be an NFL football player like I wanted to. I originally considered being a physical therapist, but I spent a lot of time in the chiropractic office growing up. One of my family members struggled with ear infections and asthma and allergies. We did multiple rounds of antibiotics. She was on the inhaler, albuterol, all sorts of things. And it wasn't until we were in a pediatrician office waiting for another consultation for her ear infection that somebody just kind of leaned over and said, "Have you tried a chiropractor before?" And my mom was desperate enough at the point to, engage into that conversation because initially it sounded a little weird. And we ended up going to this chiropractor that she recommended. And after 2 adjustments, my sister never had an ear infection. She never had asthma or allergies, and still to this day, she doesn't struggle with any of those things. And so it really was a turning point in my family's life. And I started going as a kind of year-round athlete. When one season ended, I started the next one, engaged in chiropractic care just to help my overall sports performance, my recovery, prevent injury. And so when high school came and you had to kind of do your career, research project, I just kind of asked my chiropractor, like, "Hey, can we sit down and talk about what your life is like?" And after we did that, I was sold. The money that he was able to make, the people that he got to do, hang out with, that mixture of being an entrepreneur, but having a service to be able to help people no matter where you are. It just kind of fit all the things that I originally wanted to be a sports chiropractor. So I hang out in that sports world. And in my second year of chiropractic, I was at a seminar. We have to go to seminars as chiropractors, not only for continuing education purposes, but to stay focused on who it is that we are and what we do, because the world is just so kind of like anti the philosophy that we have about life, where your body can heal, it can regenerate, it can be healthy on its own. You don't have to live a life in fear. You can live a life that's trusting of the things that we put in our body and how our body can adapt to it. And he said something that I still get goosebumps to this day. He said, "I can't imagine how frightening it must be for kids to be locked out of a world that they want to be a part of." And what he was talking about was all these sick kids, neurologically challenged kids that he was able to see and help in his office. Kids get off seizure medications, kids that weren't talking start talking again, kids that have chronic migraines and sleep issues and bedwetting, all of a sudden free from these things that prevented them from actually living their lives as kids to the fullest. And I knew from that moment, I didn't want to help those 22 athletes on the football field continued to destroy themselves, I actually wanted to help moms that were searching for answers on how they can help their kids without drugs, without surgeries, and get to the root cause of the issue and actually help their kids live a life of abundance and that optimal potential. So I pursued the certifications that his name's Tony Ebel had. And then I went even further and got my diploma in chiropractic, pediatrics, and pregnancy, which probably less than 4 to 5% of chiropractors actually carry. And I think that's why I've been able to be successful to this day, because instead of being a general chiropractor that you come in and we do all the little things to help people's back pain get better, I get to market everything around, helping moms parent their kids, in a way that's not dependent on the medical, merry-go-round. Not that medicine is always bad, but if you're dependent on it, you kind of lose your freedom and really problem-solving skills of what's going on with our kids. We stop asking questions why, and we only ask questions, what can we do to make it go away? And so that's why I love being a chiropractor. That's why I love the philosophy of chiropractic, because everything is focused on, let's ask the right questions to get to the root cause, to make the problem go away. And once we know that the problem's gone, the body's going to heal itself. The effects of optimal function is optimal health. And so I love that I get to preach a message that is changing lives and engage with people, that we can make a decision to not do antibiotics, help heal an ear infection at 2 years old, and prevent the merry-go-round of things that we did with my sister that I have seen cause things like ADHD or autism or chronic migraines or chronic, asthma and allergies, because we didn't fix the problem at the root cause. We just continually address the symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love your mission. I know you, and I've also, had a deep look at your website, and it's really interesting to me, like the scope of chiropractic medicine. And I wasn't even aware of like the depth and breadth of the chiropractic world. So not only am I glad to have you on to talk about business today, but I think if we can just educate people that there are many other treatment solutions out there, and I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about those things in the world we live in today, for sure. So I'm glad that you are spreading that message, and you're a wonderful person and practitioner. So I know your clients will be in very good hands, and hopefully you can help share that with the rest of the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the sad thing, if you look at the very beginning of, the elephant in a room of the pandemic, I think even Fauci, if you look at his very first message to the world on what's going on, he disregarded the use of masks. And he said, do what we always do when the flu season comes. Put good vitamins in your body, good food in your body. Make sure you're exercising, make sure you're sleeping, make sure you're doing the things that support your body's ability to adapt, and everything has drastically swapped over into trying to get people to believe that your body cannot adapt and you need this and this and this in order to survive. And what that's done is it's rewired the way people think, where I need whatever it is, even a vitamin or a supplement, I need something in order to live. And it's sad because we lose that innate trust in our instincts. We lose that innate trust in our body's ability to self-heal and self-regulate. And so I love having the conversations like, did you need something to become a human in the womb? Like, you were two cells that came together, that multiplied into the trillions of cells that you are today. Your eyeballs aren't on your knees, your nose isn't on your chest. Like, everything is exactly where it's supposed to be, doing exactly what it's supposed to do, without your educated mind getting in the way of telling it where to go and what to do. And so and another kind of nod to that, being heavy into the the birth world, I'm seeing a lot of pregnant ladies. I've been a part of my 3 kids' births, 2 of them at home. A female can birth a baby without consciously being present. Like, she can, God forbid, but have a stroke or have something where she can be unconscious and her body will still birth that baby, despite our educated minds' desire to get in the way of, we need this and this and this, for it to happen. And so we can think of that in the same way as if you're sick, our body will heal and will self-regulate, despite our constant desire to get in the way and to influence the function of the nervous system, or the things that we need to think of, getting away from this and that and the other thing in order to stay healthy. And so I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, because the psychology that these kids are going through now, the psychological warfare, in my opinion, is getting even worse than what can happen from a environmental or from a medical, perspective. It's not all about what research papers say. It's not all about what doctors say. It's about the instincts of moms and recognizing what is the principles of life that we can go back on. And I love that I can always just lean back on that's what chiropractic was founded on, the principles of life. All things take time. The organism is dependent on other organ systems. The lungs don't work without the heart. The heart doesn't work without the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system doesn't work without, it's all self-dependent on each other. And so I think when we start to look at symptoms, we're isolating part of the organism instead of looking at the organism as a whole. So if we have a heart issue, we're only targeting the heart. Well, is there a problem with oxygenation? Is there a problem with the immune system? Is there a problem? How are all these things interconnected? And that's why I love being a chiropractor, because somebody comes in with back pain or neck pain or ear infections or, all these sort of things. And I tell them straight away, like, look, I'm not a gastroenterologist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a cardiologist. I'm not a pulmonologist. I'm not any of these things, because I don't believe in specializing all the time and focusing in on one specific organ that's a part of an organ system that's dependent on each other. Let's look at the system that controls all of them together, right? Which is the nervous system. You have the brain, you have the spinal cord, you have nerves that are connected to every single organ, gland, tissue, cell in the body. If your spine isn't moving the way it's supposed to, instead of sending what we call proprioceptive signals to the brain, which is soothing, parasympathetic, rest and digest, healing messages to the brain, the body's going to start receiving what we call nociception, which is stress or static or like constant Metallica music to the brain, which is going to trigger that fight or flight or stress response. If your spine continues to stay in that state of poor movement, it's locked up, you're going to have a continual influx of nociception or stress signals to the brain. As stress builds up in the body, your brain doesn't go through metabolic clearance. Your muscles get tighter. You have more adrenaline and cortisol and epinephrine flowing through your body. Organ systems our organism isn't designed to be in a state of stress for weeks, months, and years, right? You're designed to be in a state of stress when you're escaping from an immediate danger. And so that stress becomes chronic, the body starts to break down. One symptom turns into another. And so instead of doing one medication for this and then another medication to cover up the side effects of that one, and then it goes on. I think, I don't know the exact stats, and they've probably changed drastically since last time I looked, but I think a good majority of Americans are on 5 or more drugs.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. And, I think you've set the foundation for what we're going to talk about in a little bit, just in terms of kind of that flight or fight.
Yeah. Yeah. People say fight, flight, freeze,
fight or flight. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think just kind of at least being aware of what's happening in your body. I think we're not educated in that way. And regardless of, everyone's point of view in the current situation, it's not just about the current situation. Right. It's about the world we live in. And it's about how it's affecting our health and our business and our relationships and all other components as well. And we're going to dig into that in a little bit further. Right. So Chris, on that, as we sort of lead into, the discussion a little bit that we are going to move into today, I'd just love to hear about your journey a little bit as a business owner. You're in a service industry, and you've already mentioned that chiropractors can make good money, but as a hands-on service provider, and a lot of my clients are hands-on physically service providers, scaling your business isn't always easy, because you're the service provider, you're the boss, you're the business, running the business. Can you talk a little bit about how you've managed that and how you managed to scale and grow and where things are headed for you now?
Yeah, well, I had the privilege, I guess, of being in school, where our first 2 years was all book work, very little hands-on practicality. And the last year was, completely flipped, very little book work. Much of that was, practicing and harnessing our skill. While my classmates spent their tuition money or student loan money on the newest Mac laptop and living in Huntington Beach and those sort of things, I was always at a seminar. I mean, every week I was gone learning something or another. And I made it a personal goal that when I graduated, I needed to be 100% certain in the product that I was going to deliver, which is the adjustment. When people graduate, most of my classmates, they were still trying to figure out how to adjust. And I'm like, that's not the time to learn how to adjust when you graduate. Like it's time to be ready to start a business. And so I've always been a little bit more of a forward thinker where I spent, my time, but by the time I had one trimester left, I was 100% confident in the adjustment that I could provide would bring healing to people. And that freed me up to then start asking different questions, while my colleagues were still asking, like, how do you do this in the adjustment? How do you do that? And they're still asking about the technical part of the job. I was able to ask, various chiropractic assistants or receptionists, like, hey, how do you answer phone calls? Hey, how do you get new patients to come in? What are some different pricing structures? How do you actually get paid for what you do? So while my colleagues were still focused on what you do, I was getting focused on how do you get paid and how do you scale, what we do. And I've always been huge. I learn based on other people's experience. I don't like to fail. And so I'm not one of those people where it's like, I'll go try it by myself. And if I fail, then I'll learn and move on. So I all these seminars, I took into account, this is how the best and the best are doing it. So I'm going to start off doing exactly the way that they do. I don't need to, reinvent the wheel. It might not be perfect for me, but I'm at least going to get started. I'm going to start selling. I'm going to start marketing. I'm going to start delivering the product. And as I get busier, as I do more and more things, then I'll start to really focus in and understand the problems that they ran into, in which I'll be able to slowly refine who it is, what I do, and how I offer that service and how I market it. I also had the privilege of interning at an office where they saw a large majority of their new patients from something like Groupon, or where you can buy a massage and a chiropractic adjustment all in one. And they gave me the opportunity to do all the new patient consultations. So maybe 10 to 15 a day I was able to do in school. And so I got a chance to rehearse my message over and over and over again, see what worked and what didn't work. And by the time I was ready to practice, I had a business model that was ready to go. I had a sales pitch that I was ready to give, and I had a product that I was certain was going to bring results. And I think that's what kind of sets me apart, is a lot of people get an idea and they want to go sell it and implement it right away, and they haven't had a chance to become a master at their craft. Obviously I'm becoming more and more of a master over time, but a lot of people want to sell a professional product at a professional price, delivering amateur results. And I don't think that's okay. And so I think service professionals, charge what your experience is. I've raised my prices over the years. It's okay to give stuff away in the beginning because you're learning just as much as they are, and I've continued to be in coaching. I've had coaching from when I was in chiropractic school. I've continued to get coaching now. And so that's been really, really important for me, just to learn from their experience rather than trying to, reinvent the wheel. Like there's plenty of other chiropractors that have done chiropractic at every stage. And so I'm just thankful that I've had people in my life that have done what I'm doing now and what I've done to can kind of like, here's the template, now make it yours, instead of here's a blank sheet of paper, figure out what you want to do.
Yeah. Nice. So you followed a model, you've had the right coaching and support. And what I really heard about what you said is at different stages you leveled up. You started off kind of free and cheap. Once you had that craft mastered, then you could increase your prices, which means, again, I'm all about like leverage, right? As soon as you've increased your prices, you can work with a few less people and make as much money. And then the next phase on from that. One of the stories that you shared with me, though, which I think is really interesting, and I just see you growing in leaps and bounds and doing all sorts of amazing things, which we're going to talk about your book and your coaching in a little bit as well. But you did share with me that a few years ago, though, you were struggling in your business and you needed to make some changes. And I know that a lot of our listeners, a lot of my clients can relate to that. Can you tell us what led you to that struggle point, and what did you do to start turning things around?
So I'm a Christian, and I dedicate everything that I do to, not only just being a good person and having good morals, but really being kingdom minded, focus on not what's going on here, but what's going to be going on eternally. And I have a great relationship with Jesus. That being said, he also holds me accountable. So when I get ahead of myself and when I get too prideful and too, focus on what I want rather than the plan that he is building out for me, which is always going to be better, he tends to remind me that I'm focused on what I want. And it's really helpful for me, because if I'm a chiropractor focusing on what I want and padding my bank account, I'm really not being the best clinician for my patients. And so what happened, I was growing my practice dramatically. It was kind of unheard of, the growth that I was experiencing. There was a marketing program that got pitched to me that seemed to make sense. It was the most money that I'd ever spent on, marketing, a marketing endeavor. I'd kind of just thrown, $100 here and there at Facebook ads and whatnot. And it was $10,000, this program. And so I was anticipating 10x, anything that you spend, you should 10x it. And so I'm like, okay, so that means my patient load is going to be 10x, my income is going to be 10x. And so I hired an associate before I really needed her, thinking that I was going to get busier, and I didn't want to train when I was busy. I wanted to kind of like not have me be the bottleneck. But what happened is, this marketing program, as I mentioned before, all my marketing has been focused on pediatrics and pregnancy and special needs and people that were wanting what I had, which is a root cause focus on, on your life. And this marketing program started to bring in people that were kind of the tire kickers, like was going to take from you instead of actually invest into you. And it was really hard. I would invest a lot of time, just like I always did, in my new patients that came in, trying to teach them and lead them into a life, not only give them what they want, but lead them into what could be, what's possible when you engage in the chiropractic lifestyle. And it wasn't working. They would come, they'd get a super cheap, adjustment, but then they'd leave because they got what they wanted. They feel better, but they weren't all the way invested into becoming better and functioning better. So I had to turn off this marketing program because it was costing way more money than it was bringing in. New patients dried up because I was advertising to every, Tom, Dick, and Harry that had a spine, instead of being targeted, in the target market and audience that I wanted to reach. I eventually had to let my associate go because we weren't growing anymore. I had to let a lot of my staff go. I was down to the last $300 in my bank account, really considering stopping this entrepreneur lifestyle, just get hired as a chiropractor somewhere and get rid of the stress of running a business. And it's when I went to another chiropractic seminar, thankfully, that I had already paid for, because I wouldn't have paid for it if I wouldn't have had the money to pay for it, if I hadn't already paid for it. And this is where I really started to get that perspective shift, where I realized that I was in business for myself. I was trying to pad my bank account instead of having the relationships that I was building with my patients. I was in a hurry to see as many new patients as possible, rather than seeing the right people and helping the people that I feel like the Lord has built me to help. And so that's that perspective shift that I talk about, where abundance was already in me. I was already having success until I tried to make success up on my own, until I really realized I'm in practice for myself right now. I'm not in practice for the reason why I got into it, which is to help people, to lead people, and to provide massive amounts of value. And that's what was going to bring those returns, not a slick marketing scheme that would get a bunch of people in the door, but really people that weren't really investing into me. And so like I said, I let go of most of my staff. I turned off the marketing, and I decided, let's go back to doing really what was bringing me success in the beginning, was memorizing my patients' names, asking how their soccer game was going above and beyond the call of duty with, calling them after their first adjustment and giving them, advice on things that was more than just, chiropractic. And sure enough, my patients started to return. It's almost like this is what I signed up for. This is the person that I really wanted to invest into. And within 6 months, we doubled my practice. I was able to buy my dream car, cash up front. We had a vacation home in the mountains, and it's this abundance that was already in me that I, with my educated mind, tried to okay, now let's artificially try to grow this. And it just didn't work because I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. I was doing it for me and not for other people.
Yeah. And I love that. And, that when I'm working with clients, I talk a lot about alignment and aligning their business with their lifestyle. And, we're going to talk about this from more of a mindset perspective. It's interesting. I don't always come from a mindset perspective per se, but, it's the same outcome, right? Which is when you're not aligned, when you don't stay in your zone of genius, which we know where your zone of genius is, right? Like, it's not the athletes and the 5-minute wonder, it's the children with special needs, the women, children. It's so you have a real niche that's obviously clearly very tightly aligned to your skills, your talents, your desires. I can see when you talk about your patients how that fills you up and makes you happy, and that really does come out into the world. And I think that there's a whole lot of other business things, that lessons learned in there, which is, don't grow, try not to grow too fast, like monitor that. Sometimes you do need to hire a little bit in advance, but it was a big risk and there was a lot of moving pieces. If it was maybe like, let's keep your existing clients and bring on an associate, that's just one piece of the puzzle. When you start, it's like a scientific experiment. When you change 4 of the variables, you can't tell which variable isn't working necessarily. So some really great lessons learned, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that. And no surprise to me that your business is thriving now and you're serving who you need to serve and making a difference in the world. And I love that. So I think that's a great segue into sort of some of the thinking and strategy that you're talking a little bit in your book. And you've mentioned it before. There's a lot going on in the world today, but pandemic or no pandemic, I think we were sort of in this cycle of quick fix, let's take a tablet to solve the problem. And it's not only health, but there's a lot of factors causing stress, illness, and unrest. And then when you start adding running a business, doing a full-time job, raising a family, and the world mentality that either is like there's a get rich quick and it's super easy, which we know it's not, or the other side of that is just like a full out, like you've got to work hard, hustle and grind, work hard, play hard mentality. It's exhausting. And it's really hard to sustain. And you're taking a very different approach, and you've already sort of started touching on that, like the abundance is already there, but you're really talking about how to get out of this state of stress and into this state of ease. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what is that all about, and maybe share a few ideas of what we can do to start getting into that state of abundance?
Yeah, great question. So the first part of my book is not business related at all. It's all health focused and helping people ask better questions of how we can be healthy, and maybe raising some variables that people had never really even thought of. So living in a state of stress means that you're survival focused. You're not choosing to go left or right or straight based on where you think the end is going to be. You're choosing to go left or right or straight, trying to get away from something that's behind you. A principle that I talk about in my book is not living in fear, which means that if you're making decisions because you're afraid of what might happen, you're not making decisions because of what can happen. You're running away from fear you're running away from fear instead of towards success. And there's a very different mentality. Some people say, well, it's the same thing. And the difference is, when you're running away from fear, you can run over a cliff because you weren't looking at, where your steps were taking you in the long run. If you're running towards success, you're never going to get into that situation because you're running with vision. And I think that's the biggest thing that I can help communicate is when you're living in a state of stress, you're worried about your own survival. When you're living in a state of ease, sure, there's still stressful things that come your way, but the decisions that you make are going to benefit you not only in the short term, but in the long term as well. So from a health perspective, if you are putting foods in your body that are contributing to inflammation, that's not allowing your brain to work to its full potential. If you're sitting all day and not moving and not exercising, it's going to wither your joints and your muscles into nothing. And therefore you're going to be dependent on something that can keep you mobile. If your emotional life is stressful and you're not taking care of your brain and getting into constant burnout, you're only going to be making decisions that are going to get you out of that short-term danger rather than making decisions that are going to lead you into long-term success. So from a health perspective, look at your diet. It's kind of the age-old thing. A lot of people think that looking at your diet means that you have to eat salads all day, every day. Sometimes salads aren't good for people, but it's paying attention to your body on what makes sense and looking into principles where food is energy. It can be nutrient dense or nutrient lacking. So for example, Cheez-Its. it's energy, but it's very nutrient lacking. It'll give you that sense of fullness, but it's not actually going to provide your body what it needs in order to perform. You can fill your gas tank up with water and your meter is going to read full, but the second you turn your car in and try to go, you're not going to go anywhere because it didn't actually provide your car what it needed. It's actually going to hurt your car. You're going to blow up your engine, right? And so focus on more nutrient dense food, whether that's in supplement form, not using petroleum based artificial supplements, but using whole raw food supplements that are going to let your body process what it needs instead of giving it an excess of one thing. So having a diverse and varied diet is very important. Looking at your work environment, are you sitting down all day, not moving the body? That's really, really important. The body likes change. The brain likes change. And so not only standing, having a standing desk to change to, but maybe sitting on an exercise ball, maybe doing appointments, phone calls, especially walking around rather than sitting at the same spot. That's going to allow your body to pump good nutrients into the spine and keep your body active and moving. So that way your brain is getting feedback about what's going on around you. And then taking inventory of a concept that I read in my book called your mental ecosystem. If your brain isn't working the way it's supposed to, it's going to trigger that state of stress, which causes your brain to make short-term decisions. And so looking at, is what I'm doing actually what I want to be doing? Mm-hmm. Or is what I'm doing necessary? Or can I say no more? Can I say yes more? Taking inventory of the way that you process your life and not getting stuck in routines and patterns for the sake of routines and patterns. You mentioned I'm a regenerative farmer, and what that means is that my focus is largely on the soil. Mm-hmm. What can we do to produce healthy soil? Because if we have healthy soil, that means the grass that my cows eat is going to be healthy, which means that either the beef that they provide or the milk that they give is also going to be nutrient dense. How you build healthy soil is you let things grow and die. And so sometimes there might be seasons into your life that you do something that's really productive and really helpful, but that's not something that you have to do forever. You can let that go, let that die, let that the life of that sow nutrients into the soil. So that way, whatever comes up next will even be stronger than what was before. And I think a lot of people don't like to look at life in terms of seasons. If you start something, you have to do it forever or else it's a failure. Where you can start something, do it for a little bit, learn from it, and whatever's going to come up in its place is actually going to be stronger than what that was before, because you're going to take those lessons that you learned and your next venture is going to be even stronger. Looking at the relationships that you have in your life, are they bringing you down, or are they building you up? Sometimes people that are around negative people all the time, just because it's their only friend or whatever, you might be doing more harm than good. And so taking inventory of your relationships, are they building you up and carrying you where you want to be, or keeping you stagnant and constantly bringing you down? It's okay to have seasons of friends. You have best friends for a little while. I think the gold standard of friend is thought to be you have a friend since kindergarten that is your friend always, and that's your best friend. When it maybe just because you know them longer doesn't make them your best friend. Maybe that's actually hurting your progress in life because you're stuck doing the same routines and the same thing that you've always done. And so it's good to build a continual base of community and relationships, because if you're stuck with the same people all the time, you're never going to get an out of the box or new perspective. Yeah, was that helpful?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I mean, some of my takeaways are, eating the right food, moving, but kind of making change for the body. I love taking inventory of what's going on and the decisions you're making, saying yes more or saying no more. The relationships, I think, are a big one for a lot of people, for sure. And, it sounds like then when you're taking stock of all of these things, and the other thing I want to say about this is I love the convergence of sort of the health and wellness piece, and even like the natural environment. We sometimes forget that we're so interconnected at every single level. There's so many factors that are influencing us. And I think it's just really good to, people might be saying, why do you have like a chiropractor on a business related podcast? But it's exactly that. It's sort of the framework in which we set up our businesses and run our businesses. There's so many layers of this that if one piece is off, you're going to see the unbalance in a different area, which I think is the exact example you were talking about in your own business when that was not balanced. And I'd love to hear about what was happening sort of health and wellness wise around that as well. But there not only was the decision making balance, but what do you think was like leading to that imbalance for you to go off in perhaps the wrong direction?
I've always told myself, if I'm doing the same thing 10, 15 years from now, I'm not growing. I'm not a master at it. I'm doing the same thing over and over again, And so I've always had this desire to grow my practice. I've always had visions of multiple chiropractors working with me, mentoring and sending out. And so I think it probably came out of a good heart where it's like, I want growth, and maybe this is my opportunity to grow. I don't think it started as, I just want more money, but it turned into that because I forced something that it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right opportunity. And I think I went against my core values being, freedom and abundance. By spending that much on marketing, it had to work or else it would tie me up. And I don't think that's the right way to go about things. That's almost like spending your money before you have it, And so I think it came out of a good heart, but I just didn't do it the right way. Like what we're doing now, it's funny, we talked about earlier, as I became more experienced, I raised my prices because people are getting not a new grad adjustment. They're getting a seasoned chiropractor adjustment that's done tens of thousands of adjustments over the years. And what we're doing now is actually doing the opposite. In the spirit of abundance, we're moving to what we're kind of coining like the co-op chiropractic model, where we're doing a membership where people can pay a low fee, come in as much as they want throughout the month, in an effort to get people to take better care of their health instead of letting money be the bottleneck of why they can't get fully healthy, because they can't afford to come in the amount of times that it would take. But with this business model, it becomes more scalable, because now our retention is going to go sky high because people can afford it forever. And so we don't have to focus on seeing a whole bunch of new patients. And the more people that we see, now I can bring up a chiropractor. My income is going to be level instead of going up and down with influx of new patients and people leaving. It's just going to, go kind of like that, lowering my prices and changing the way I do things, not to like out of fear of like, oh no, I need more new people. I'm not growing. I need to make changes. It's not working, but out of inspiration of like, I'm here to see families, not just one person out of the family. So I need to make it sustainable and affordable. My number one goal is to see as many whole families in my practice as possible. And so you kind of take into account, people can't afford $1,000 a month for chiropractic care. Sure, if they have a really bad issue, they might afford it for that time until the issue is gone, but it's not something that they're going to choose sustainably to do for the rest of their life. And so I'm like, how can I make an offer so good that people, of course, are going to choose to do this for the rest of their life? And so this is just the next evolution, but I had to be certain and confident that people would come in, like, and now that I'm so certain that I can charge, what I was charging high value before. If I charge less, of course it's going to work because people know the value is there. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. And, I think it's a great insight about what I talk about in my simple business method is self, business, and team. So it's mindset, the right business model, and the right team. And all of those pieces are coming to play. And at different stages of your business, you're going to do different things. But in that scaling level, it's really interesting that you are actually transforming your whole business model. And it's still working. So I think that's just, again, like we're covering so many topics. I think we need to have another guest star session
probably,
with you. But, like the business model is really interesting to me, that you've been able to actually put a lower price point. It's kind of counterintuitive, but a lower price point is actually providing even more revenue and more stability. And I loved seeing that evolution of a business model as you become more experienced, lessons learned, a few failures along the way, but we need that to learn and grow. So I love that.
Right.
So Chris, I do want to just share, we've been talking a little bit about the book, but the new book is coming out soon. So what can people expect, and when and where can they grab a copy of that book?
Yeah, my new book is called Perspective. Rewire Your Brain for Success and Abundance. And we kind of did a good synopsis of it here, where I'm compiling my experience as a chiropractor, as a neurologically based chiropractor, with the lessons that I've learned as an entrepreneur, with the lessons that I've learned as a regenerative farmer, and kind of modeling it all in one to hopefully give people a big overarching view of life principles. Really, like how to live a life of abundance is not a quick step fix. It's overall, like, these are foundations that you have to build. And so I try to give people all the different variables that they need to keep watch, so that they can ask better questions, so that they can grow sustainably, and so that they can problem solve when they do reach a problem. I think that's the hardest part for an entrepreneur, is you reach a problem and sometimes we just grasp at the marketing straw to hopefully fix it, and sometimes it does, but most of the time it just causes a bigger problem in the future. So the beginning, we talk, as I mentioned earlier, all about health, all about the different variables that people might not be looking at in their health, especially if they haven't visited a more holistic, opinionated, practitioner. If they've only been in the medical system, whether it is in Canada or the United States or all around the world, all medical practitioners don't take very many nutrition classes. They don't learn about the effects of electromagnetic fields. They don't look at the delicate system that is the body of interrelated, heart health and brain health and stomach health and immune health. They don't look at how all those things are related together. Not that that's a bad thing, because they're very good at what they do, and we need medicine in the way that they practice, but sometimes getting a different opinion will allow you to make different choices. And oftentimes that's what's keeping people in that state of fear and scarcity, is their health just isn't good. And so they can't think beyond their immediate needs for survival. I need money for my medication so that I can continue to do the same thing that I'm doing, so they get stuck in a cycle. And so once you get your physical and mental and emotional health and spiritual health going, then you can start to develop a vision. Now you can think bigger than just your immediate needs for survival. And so I teach people how to craft a vision. And then we go into core values. I think core values are like the guidelines that help people on the straight and narrow in their vision. And so when you want to make a decision, you can run you can run that question through the filter of, for me, does this provide more freedom and more abundance? If it doesn't, then I'm not even going to consider it, because it's going to lead me in a direction that isn't going to ultimately lead me to more freedom and abundance, which is ultimately what I'm achieving. And then we go into purpose, and then we go into goal setting, and then we go into some critical thinking skills that I've learned, as an entrepreneur, all with the kind of farming weaved in there to provide analogies for things that you can see, for kind of maybe skills that are more maybe metaphysical in the human realm. And so I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be one of those books where people take one read through it and they're like, I liked a lot of things, but I need to read it again because it was so dense with information, especially if it's new information. So I expect it to be like that, where you read it, you kind of go off and process and make some changes, and then you read it again and go off and make some changes and read it again. And so I think it's going to be one of those timeless books where it's based on the principles of life and foundational business, not like a how to market in 2021 or how to make funnels in 2022. It's kind of one of those things that will always be there because it's based on life principles, not necessarily get rich quick fix modalities.
Well, I love it. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. It's coming out in February 2022, and I'll be sharing some information to my audience when it's ready to come out and letting people know when it's going to be available as well. But I'm really excited about it. I love the new perspective, as the book is called, on business, that marketing isn't the only tool. And I just see more and more people burning out in business because of that, and they're not getting those foundations right, whether it's like health and wellness, even what you've just talked about, vision and goal setting. People are sort of misaligned with that, and then it's like, well, my goals are not working, or my vision is not working, or it's not clear. And then that's having an effect on the piece where I come in, which is then how do you turn that into a business model? So these things all have to play nicely together, and I'm really excited. I think we're having an evolution in the business world and entrepreneurial space as well. We need to start looking at this more holistically, and I'm really glad that you've been able to join us today to share that experience and how that can actually assist us in, not only business, as I've said, but life in general. And just we're here to be happy, healthy, abundant, successful people. And if we're struggling to do that, those values of freedom, and I love freedom, travel, abundance, but they can quickly get diminished as a result.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I hope this was helpful.
Well, thank you, Chris. And if anyone would like to follow Dr. Chris, you can check him out on Instagram at Dr. Chris Boman or at Trailhead Chiro for more health and wellness tips. And I'll be leaving all of those in the show notes as well. And if you're ready to simplify and scale your business and want my help to do that, you can visit me at my website, inspireanddrive.com. You can download my free simple business blueprint there, or book a free discovery call and we'll map out a plan that's right for your business. So that's all for now. I'm Natasha Mitchell. Let's keep things simple. Bye for now.